So, what do you do for TLG?
So I am one of our on-staff artists. Well, I say on-staff, but
Right, right, right.
work just shows up on my desk, and then I just tackle whatever Steve needs me to do.
Sure. And what is that mostly these days?
Mostly it is monster art. However, it did start with the character sheets for the new printing coming up of the new core books.
Yeah, that's cool. Have you always done like, has like monster art kind of been like your focus before?
Um, it's sort of been all over the place. I really got my start with art as like a kid. It sort of started off with like, I grew up playing old video games. So I grew up on the Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, all that.
Yeah.
And my first comic book was just me basically copying the plot of Star Fox and just making it in comic form.
Yeah.
And that was my first like go of it. And then it just kind of spiraled from there. My biggest sort of like the biggest turning point was when I found my first comic book, which was Spawn. Um,
Mm,
so Todd McFarlane and all the old Image guys were kind of a big inspiration for me. So
sure.
learning, human anatomy and drawing weird monsters and weird stuff has kind of always been my thing. So it's not
Sure.
so much just monsters; it's kind of like the whole gamut of stuff.
Just like fantasy characters and like weird little guys.
Oh yeah, yeah, the weirdest little guys. And then lately, I've also been getting into drawing more like vehicles and mechanical things. So I'm
Mm.
spreading my wings a little bit.
Is that hard to go from like, I don't even know what I'm, I guess, trying to ask, like one set of subjects versus another? I'm very not skilled with visual art.
I would say it depends. So for me, drawing a like technical thing
Hmm.
is almost easier because you do have a hard set of rules to follow.
Sure.
Like you know how a vehicle looks, and like
It's not going
there
to be expressive.
exactly there's like the entire like chassis of the vehicle and all the underbody stuff, the drivetrain, everything. It all has to work in a very specific way. So they're made specific ways.
Sure.
When you get to like making the body, you can kind of go crazy with making like the body lines and all that, but
Hmm.
if it doesn't look right, you can fix it, and it's just all right. I got this. It's easy peasy. There's just hard
Sure.
rules to follow. With organic things, it's almost harder. Um,
Right.
and sort of splitting that off, I would say that drawing monsters and creatures is easier than drawing people because, and the one thing that kills us, of course, is like over like millennia of like evolution, we have grown to, just recognize evolutionary, uh, like what a person looks like and if proportions are wrong.
Yeah.
So whenever you're drawing a person, like at least when I'm drawing one, there's those specific rules that you follow, starting with your primitive shapes and then building up on them.
Yeah.
But if something's just ever so slightly off, I can tell and it drives me up the wall. Like
Yeah.
there's art styles like the old Eon Flux anime, which had like really fucked up proportions. Like everybody was gangly and weird, but
Yeah.
the proportions were proportional to each other. So it didn't trigger that weird part of your brain that's like, no, this is wrong. It's like,
Right.
okay, people, they look weird, but they're people. So like
Yeah.
the just like working with people is harder than working with monsters. So I love drawing monsters. I do enjoy drawing people too. I can do it just fine. But I love
Sure.
drawing monsters more because I can break the rules and I can fudge things and I can hide mistakes. And it's just like,
Yeah.
basically it allows me to be lazy.
He's weird. I don't know what to tell you. He's fine. He
Yeah.
looks like a guy.
Like, why does this thing look so messed up?
There's a
Oh,
monster.
yeah, it's a monster, weird lore stuff. I definitely didn't, you know, get bored or like, oh, just want to stop or anything.
It's a very on purpose function of this monster's biology.
Well, that's kind of the funny thing too, is whenever you do something like that with a creature, you
Yeah.
can make up fun lore of just like, well, I really just kind of got tired of doing this piece, but lore wise, insert whatever, and then it becomes canon, and people are like, oh, that's so cool, and you're like, I'm glad you love my laziness. I will continue.
Yeah, it's really just enabling, is what we're doing.
Yeah,
I remember I'm like racking my brain trying to remember where it is, but I saw like I think it might have been a video game or something, but there was like a dog that was like laying down with its paws like this. And it took several hours before my boyfriend pointed out to me that like the dog's one like bend to paw was like crazy, crazy long. And that if the dog were to stand, it would be like
lopsided.
I feel like with a human, if it were like human art, I would have noticed it like that. But I think you're right. Like we just don't. It's kind of slower to pick up on if it's not like human art.
Yeah,
Like, are the rest of your family also artists?
no, not at all. I am the only one. Well, actually, sorry, my brother is one as well.
Sure.
Um, so we're the black sheep in the family.
That's awesome.
And somebody had to be eventually on the evolutionary line. Um, no, my family has like an assortment of like stuff they've done in the past and all that other stuff. But no, my brother and I are the only artists,
Sure.
as far as I'm aware.
How did you like get into it? Or you said like through Star Fox and stuff like that.
Well, I've kind of always been doing art. Like as a kid, we all draw.
Hmm.
We all have those crayon sets we grew up with,
The
and
doodles,
oh yeah, absolutely. So it just kind of it's just always been a feature. I can't ever think of a time that it wasn't a feature.
for sure.
It's just always been there. Kind of like,
Yeah.
like I've always had these hands. They've just always been there.
It's just the thing.
It's just there. It
Yeah.
is. It is.
I love that.
Yeah.
I've I've been hearing more and more like obviously you're awesome at it and are like doing it as a job, but like I've been seeing a lot of like art is just what people are supposed to do. Like we should all be doing it whether or not it can be like monetized. It's because it's like doing art and like artistic stuff is just what we're made for.
Yep. It's just expression because we as human beings we are our cultures were built around storytelling.
Yeah.
We've always been doing that since we could express an idea, whether be drawn or spoken or I suppose like
Yeah.
gestured before language, but like we're a storytelling species, so like everybody has that, has some way that they express themselves, whether or not they think it or not, because
Yeah.
somebody's sort of expression could be, like, yeah, they may be just organizing an Excel spreadsheet, but there is, you could say that in form of someone's expressions, the way that they organize that spreadsheet. It's
Yeah.
like it,
Pe-
it, it bleeds into everything you do.
People that are like insisting like I don't do any of that. I'm not artistic. My brain doesn't work that way. I've met so many of those people and it's like, okay, do you sing in the car? Do you like go to Zumba classes or like dance at all? Like do you like to go out and dance? Like there's a million little things that are artistic about the way that we just live that I think people don't see as artistic because it's not like making them money.
Right. It is at its core, it is just a expression of that creative energy
Yeah.
within. That's it. That's all it is. Whether or not you're actually creating something from nothing, like what Peter and I do with Paige, um, or if you're creating like those like good vibes by dancing, like you said, like with Zumba or singing in the
Yeah.
car. It's all an act of creation and like expression. That's all art is.
Yeah. Man, I took one Zumba class when I was in like high school and it was the most terrifying thing ever. I don't know why that came to mind. I was like, what's just an artistic thing that people do in their daily lives?
I have a gal I work with who's really big into Zumba, and like she's very passionate about it. And I'm like, I'm glad that works for you because I could never.
Yeah,
I'm amazed. I
it
am
takes all kinds.
like, kudos to her. More power to her, and anybody else who does Zumba. Really, like,
Yeah,
that's not my vibe. I don't. I just don't do that. But you know what?
it's terrifying.
It
Because
makes them.
you go and you don't know the steps and everyone else does.
Mhm.
And so it's like a socially awkward person's like nightmare. Everyone's in on it except for
First
you.
day of school.
It's like, oh God.
First day of school is a transfer student. There you go.
What? Terrible. One thing that I was wondering is like my background's in writing and I've not dedicated any time to like trying to develop any skill in visual art. Um, but like when starting a piece of writing or a poem, I usually go into it with like something specific in mind that I want to work on, like a metaphor that I want to put in the piece or like a theme or something. Does art kind of also work that way? Like, do you go in with a nugget of what you want in the piece? And I don't know
Um,
if that's like different when you're obviously being like commissioned for certain like pieces, but
right. No, you definitely can. I, I've definitely had ideas for more philosophically driven stories that I would love to illustrate
mm,
and hide like, certain symbols in there and, cult references and stuff like that. It's just kind of that's my thing.
yeah.
Uh, but for us, like the way that I sort of like see it, I guess I could break it into like two categories here is like, on the one hand, when I'm just creating a piece, I just visualize it like, watching a movie almost.
Mm,
And then I just take that still frame and I do my best to just put it on a page. As far
sure.
as adding, ideas or concepts or things, those definitely do develop as the art develops as well. Sometimes I have gone in with a preconceived idea or something that I've wanted to put into something,
Right.
and I've been able to do that. It's all over the place. It's just
Yeah.
you just go with the flow. It's like whatever the vibe is, you just go with the vibe, and stuff happens.
Right. That's so interesting. Like you imagine like a still frame of a movie, like a full scene with like the stuff around it, and then you're able to like call on that and like translate it to the page.
More or less, yeah.
That's so foreign to me. That's so like interesting.
Are you like, so just like serious question? Are you able to like see like it with your mind's eye? Like if you close your eyes, are you able to see like images?
Yes.
Okay,
I've learned that that's not a thing for everybody.
that's a apparently not a common thing.
Crazy.
It is crazy,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's literally just that, just like imagining a thing, watching it unfold and happen. I let the idea just run
Yeah.
away with itself. Like I'll come up with something and then I just like, all right, imagination, go, just go. And then when I see something cool, I'm like, all right, snapshot. This is what we're using.
That is so awesome. Do you think that you would still be able to like make art if you couldn't imagine in like a visual sense?
I don't know if I could, because like the imagination part is very important to me. It's a very integral part of like my process and everything I do. Um,
Yeah,
like I'm a big fan of Jungian psychology, and he digs into the active imagination stuff, and like all of that like ties into every fiber of my being. And I don't know if I could be as creative as I am without it. Could I make art? Probably, but I it would not be as creative
sure.
because I think of it more like a, if you want to get into like a spiritual like sort of way of looking at it,
Yeah,
sort of like me collaborating with my own soul is the way I look at it.
that's awesome. Is that part of that like what did you call it? Psychology? Some
Jungian psychology. So it's all the stuff that Carl Jung sort of dug into over his career.
cool. I've not heard of that before. Like
Oh,
what's the cliff notes?
okay, so Cliff Notes. Cliff Notes would be um, what he developed as an idea called active imagination. But surprise, surprise, we've been doing that for thousands of years. It's shamanic journeying and shamanic work,
Mm,
where and both of them are basically the same thing. You close your eyes and you allow your subconscious to become conscious in your mind and in your actual vision in your mind's eye, and you just let it go, let it
sure.
go, its thing. Go like the idea that he put out was like, imagine an object in a dark room and just hold the image of that object for a few seconds and then just see what happens. Just like let go of control and see what happens.
I've heard the term maladaptive daydreaming.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the same thing?
That I'm not sure about, but
Sure, fair.
well, it's like similar to daydreaming. I daydream all the time. But more or less, that's sort of the idea. And for Jung, that was an integral part of like treating his clients, is he would have them do these active imagination sessions and they would bring these ideas and things to him, and he'd be able to sift through all of that data, everything that they were going through, and really dig at the core of what was going on in their subconscious, what's going on, like like any wounds that needed to be healed, etc., and so forth.
Mm,
But for me, it's the creative process.
right.
Just like go inside of my own head and I'm like, hey, homegirl. And my uncle's like, hey, what's up, girl? You're like, all right, here's a cool idea we got. Let's see what we can come up with.
That's really interesting.
Oh, absolutely. Because if you could hear my own thoughts when I'm working on a piece, it's a constant flow of, well, I say constant. It's a lot of like silence and just like visual ideas popping in.
Sure.
And the occasional, should I? Ooh, that would be cool though. Let's do that. Like
Yeah.
it's it's just a fun, it's fun is what it is. It's like play. It's just endlessly fun.
It sounds almost like or exactly what you said, like collaborating with your soul. Like it sounds like you're really in touch with your artistic self as like another individual.
Yeah,
I feel like do you feel like that makes it easier to just like go without like doubting yourself as you're creating?
absolutely it does. Because I can trust in myself. It's
Yeah.
like I know that I can do well. Like, yeah, I've had validation and I always love validation because I'm an anxious little bean and I never heard you're good enough in my life, but like, but in reality, I genuinely do know that I'm a talented artist and I do believe that. So it's like I can
Right.
trust to come up with something cool, even if it's not right away. I know that an idea will come. I just have to let it.
Sure. Is there like I'm sure you've been asked this a lot, but is there advice that you would give to someone who's kind of just starting out and is battling that?
Oh, that's so difficult. Is like you never really stop. The imposter syndrome never stops.
Right.
It
Yeah.
never ceases to amaze me. Like every time Steve's like, "Hey, I got more stuff for you," and I'm like, "Oh, you're still keeping me around." Okay.
Oh my God, when he told me like he wanted to talk with me, I was like, he doesn't want to work with me anymore. He's gonna say like, "Hey, listen, we're going our separate ways."
I'm
And then
a
it turned
value.
out he was gonna hire me. It was like total opposite.
Right? Well, it's like you play the constant like comparison game with yourself, or at least I did for the longest time of like, oh, I'm not a Todd McFarlane, I'm not a Peter Bradley, and so on. It's like, no, I'm not. That's what's cool though. It's like I
Yeah.
can like I think my style can meld with Peter's pretty well in the books that we produce,
Yeah.
at least like pretty well alongside. Um, but it's like it's still distinctly me,
Right.
which I think that's important. You need to be able to develop your own style. So like people who are struggling, the struggle never stops. And it's kind of like defeating to hear that, but like it really does. The best thing you can do is just like love yourself. Tell yourself that you are good at what you do, and work on improving because you have to accept the fact that you're always going to be better tomorrow than you were today,
Mm.
as long as you keep honing your craft and actually putting passion behind it. Because the moment that you start beating yourself up about like self doubt and worrying constantly, it's no longer going to be fun. It's going to go from a passion to just like this toxic relationship where
Yeah.
that creative part of you wants to come out. It wants to be expressed. It wants to make things and just express itself.
Right.
Whether or not you want to be like known in like the RPG space, whether or not you want to be known like in a gallery, or if it's just for yourself, you have to be kind to that part of yourself. It's a very sensitive part of your own soul, that artistic side. So you just have to let it happen and accept that. You know what? Even if you can recognize, yeah, my proportions are not good when I'm drawing a person, you can learn. It's a learnable skill. You can develop those skills. It's
Yeah.
and it everybody hates. I think like a lot of artists. I shouldn't say everybody. I think a lot of artists, myself included, hate doing the fundamentals because they're boring. But
What
the
are
fun
the fundamentals?
learning your primitive shapes and building people out of primitives. So like a person on a page is built out of squares and circles and triangles.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's your primitive breakdown.
Cool.
So you the old like breakdown method is like the head is just like it's a circle, and then like the circle comes from like here to the top of your head, so like right under your nose to the top of your head, and then it's a little bit of a triangle that meets for your chin, and you just round that off, and you
Yeah.
start having like the fundamentals of the face and so on and so forth for the rest of the body. And there's a lot of different ways you can sort of reshape that to work for you, but it, and again, it's not fun having to learn the primitives, but they do help
Sure.
because when you get the basics down, actually doing anatomy is a lot easier, and drawing people is a hell of a lot easier. Because
Mm.
like I did, I've done like speed sketches just like to test that of like drawing a person in a pose without having a reference sheet with me of just like, okay, I'm not taking pose reference. I'm just going to draw a shape, start drawing a pose, see what comes up, and I'm going to make it proportional. And having those primitives really freaking helped. So because you can refine your shapes as you go, like as long as you have the basic structure down. The
Yeah.
skeleton can only stretch but so many ways. It's like you're not going to
Yeah.
have like your leg just completely perpendicular. Well, I should. You can do the split. You can probably do it fine,
If
but
you're
like
ambitious.
you're not going to have that leg coming all the way up and popping out of your socket. And there's things that people can and can't do, and so like it's contortionists don't count. Like I'm sorry, I'm going to exclude all of them.
The
That's cheating.
exception to the rule.
It's sort of just like trusting the process, starting from the basics, learn your basics, and then practice stuff that's actually fun. like
Sure.
like I draw high, more like gritty realistic looking stuff with a lot of like line work, and on one hand I hate myself for it, but on the other hand I love it just because I don't know, I guess I'm a glutton for punishment on the page. I just love doing it. But I also have taken to drawing more of like a fusion of like Western anime style of just like for fun.
Sure.
Oh, okay. Like
Is that like the Avatar, the Last Airbender type? That's what I
I
think of when I think Western anime.
would absolutely say like
Okay.
Avatar, Korra, and then the Witcher animated series.
I haven't seen The Witcher, and I didn't even know there was one.
There's a movie. There's actually two.
I'm gonna
So
write that down really quick.
yeah, it's Nightmare of the Wolf, and then they're doing one with actually having Geralt in the show or in the movie. So they got Doug Cockle to do the voice. They have Geralt in it. Nightmare of the Wolf is all about a young Vesemir, so that's really cool to see.
That sounds awesome.
Oh, it's great. I love it. So that's that Western fusion style with anime, and that's what I love doing.
I guess
On
we'll find out, but I feel like that cartoonized style, like, I feel like that never gets old or like looks old.
no, I think it's fairly close to evergreen. Like
Yeah.
with anime, I think a lot of like the modern stuff is very, I don't know, it just feels too samey. Like stuff from back in like the
Yeah.
90s and the 80s is like it's got more character and it stands the test of time because it's more unique.
Right.
Like a like Akira is my favorite like animated film. And it's very iconic. It has a look to it.
I think I know which one it is. It's Akira.
And
I want to make sure I'm thinking of the right one.
there's nothing else that looks like it in terms of like styling.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I've seen clips of this, but never seen it.
Yeah, so like, and I think granted, I know there's a lot of nostalgia for older like 90s and 80s like Western cartoons and things, and I'm about to make a couple of people mad, but that's
Let's go. Fire them up.
I think that style is very outdated, and it's just that it
Sure.
won't stand the test of time. Like the stories are good, it's the art that wasn't really there because I think it was trying to be too realistic. When you're animating something, you want to be slightly detached from reality, or that's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
You can still have something be grounded in the story, but I think that detachment is like a better thing to go for. Because
Right.
when you think of like, the what was it, Tale of Fire and Ice or something, that was that like they filmed everything on film and then retraced it or redrew it all. So like
Wow.
it looks weird. It's a weird looking movie.
Sure.
Fire and Ice, I think, is all it is. But the way the characters move, it's almost like Uncanny Valley
Mhm.
because they move very accurately to human movement, almost like on the one to one. And
Yeah.
it's so weird and uncanny, and I don't like it. Even like the old Lord of the Rings animated film, and this will make a lot of people angry. I don't like how that looks either. I think the voice acting is atrocious. I'm sorry, guys.
Oh my god.
It's like the thing that tickles me so much is like I've listened to clips of it, like just like out of context, and like like clips of Smog, like when Bilbo meets.
Oh, dude.
Just like, why does Smog sound like he just like woke up from like a nap and he's just like this lard ass who's just like rolled over. He's like, I can smell you. It's
He's
just it just sounds so unmenacing, and I'm like,
Yeah. It's like
I'm
I've
not.
met this man.
Yeah, like I met this guy at the corner store. Like I'm not afraid of this dragon. It's
Dude,
like,
like bad voice acting
oh,
is one of my favorite things in the
oh,
world.
it's awful. I have done voice acting too, so like it hurts me a little bit more.
Dude, no way.
Yeah, I've done quite a bit. There is a mod, an unofficial mod. It's called Fallout: The Frontier. I'm in that. I'm in a couple of other indie games, and I've done like voiceover for like a commercial, not multiple, just one.
Sure.
But yeah, like I've done voice acting before. It's great.
That's so cool. Like, how
Thank.
did that start?
I was just bored and I wanted to try it.
Is it still that easy? Because,
You can get into it if you want to. I can straight up send you links to like, go like start, trying out for different like things and all that and
I
getting.
mean, that'd
Yeah,
be pretty great.
I can send you all the links. It's like there's still like those other like voice acting communities that like I'm not in their discords anymore, but they're easy to get into.
Sure.
There's a lot of people who are really helpful within like the voice acting world to each other. It's a really nice community. I love them. They're all wonderful people.
Yeah.
I would still be doing it if I could hire someone to edit all my shit for me because
Mm.
once again, I'm lazy. I don't like doing it. I don't mind the sound of my own voice. It's fine. I'll listen to myself talk all day, every day. I think I sound lovely, but I hate editing the same crap over and over and over again.
That's fair. Is it pretty monotonous to do that?
I feel like it's monotonous. And I'm like,
Sure.
bro, I could be playing Monster Hunter right now. I could be like drawing. I could take a nap, like, but
And
I
you
can't.
can't like listen to a podcast or anything while you do it either, because you have to be listening for stuff.
Like if I could hire someone to do all that for me, then absolutely I'd do it. It's more so like a cost thing than anything,
Sure.
but like yeah, it was really awesome. I enjoyed it. I got to do like I did a class with Kira Buckland. She did the voice of 2B in Near Automata.
Mm,
So like she was a great teacher, absolutely phenomenal. I think she's one of the people who still runs that Discord as well.
sure. Is
So
there like something that you learned from her that stands out as like the most valuable like lesson from a professional voice actor?
there's so many things she taught us in a short time. um,
I'm the worst person for asking questions like these because if the question starts with what is your favorite or what is the most, I can't answer it most of the time.
but you inflict it on others because it's
Oh
just like
yes.
my turn. Um, yeah, I would say just like how to emote as a character was the most valuable thing I got out of that.
Mm,
I've been complimented before in the booth about like my volume control um, from the engineer. He told me like when I was doing the commercial, he was just like, oh, like usually I have to tell people like stop being so loud and projecting because he deals with a lot of stage actors. You know,
wow.
you do that a lot as a stage actor. You project.
Yeah.
Uh, but I would assume like um quick aside, do you do any like stage like speaking like with your poetry or
I-
at all?
I've done spoken word,
Uh-huh.
but my book is called Quiet Kid. Projection is not my thing.
Okay,
And
no,
I'm
that's
the person that gets up on the mic and speaks quietly.
perfect though. That's the thing. You're letting the microphone work for you. That's the secret to like doing good voice acting. You let the micro exactly.
And
You
here
let
I thought I was just a bad projector, turns out.
no, that's the thing. Let the microphone do all the work for you. That's where all the best stuff comes out of. Like, yeah, there's
Sure.
people who do yelling and stuff, and but like they're further away from the mic or the mic gain is dropped a good bit. You let the technology do all the work for you, so that way your voice stays like healthy.
Right, right.
Um, so learning to emote as a character was like one of the more valuable things because like I can get emotional, I can emote things, but emoting like hard emotion or like even like anything like on the extreme side of the spectrum and maintaining control over it was probably the most like valuable thing that I learned in that class with
Sure.
her. There's only 8 of us, so we got a lot of really good like feedback from her and each
That is
other.
awesome. Small
It
classes. Those are the shit.
was amazing. Like I absolutely loved every second of it, and like I would highly recommend if anybody's into that. If there's like, if you can find one, a lot of those like a lot of voice actors do offer up classes, and like do some like hands-on training and things.
Hmm.
Absolutely sign up for it. Like obviously don't like jump in on like anybody's. Like find someone who's reputable, but
Right.
like they're totally worth it. Absolutely worth it. Even if you need that little ego boost of just like, oh, you're fine. You can do this. You're good. Perfect.
The most intimidating part of it to me always felt like putting together a reel of like stuff. The technology side of that intimidates me. The preparation of that intimidates me. Like, what did you do all that?
I never made a reel because I never had enough material that I could use for it.
Sure.
All the projects that I was on were under NDAs when I was working on them.
Oh,
So
are reels supposed to be like stuff that you've already done for published content?
uh, as far as like I can recall, like if it's out there and it's public, you can use it in your reel. But like if it's not been announced or it's not published, don't break your NDA.
Right, right.
So like I had nothing that I could use, and there is other stuff that I could have probably pulled from, but they weren't really great like tryout performances. So I was just like, I'm not gonna,
Sure,
not even gonna try. So it's fine. Plus,
sure.
that also would have helped me if I did get around to doing that because I got typecast with like so I have a lower feminine register, which I love. It's wonderful. It's
I
very
love low feminine voices.
very velvety. So whenever I let it just roll, it has that nice like butter smoothness to it.
Ooh,
Very
yeah.
into the ears.
That's awesome.
I got cast as dudes a lot.
Fucking what? Pump the brakes.
like so like if you could just imagine, I go in for, an audition. I'm like, hey guys, how's everything going? I hope everyone's doing fantastic today. And they're like, so can you do a southern mechanic who
Oh my god.
are you kidding me right now?
What?
Yeah. So I'm just like, all right, fine. It's for whatever reason, like I land like right enough on the range that I can dip into like chick sounding like a dude, but like it's just enough that you don't think about it too much.
Sure.
Just like, oh, I, I have a good villainous voice and I want to freaking use it and I don't get
Yeah. Like immediately when you start like when you kind of dropped and like started doing that, it was like this would be such a good like villain.
uh-huh.
I'm making shirts, I'm making flyers, and I'm making signs, and I'm gonna march outside of whatever Capitol building I need to demand more lower femme voices in stuff.
We need more of that in the world. Absolutely.
Oh yes.
I love it. It's fun to abuse, especially when I get to like mess with my friends with it. Like,
Oh yeah.
oh, I think you'll get a kick out of this. There's a buddy of mine. We go back and forth all the time. We're always sending rude stuff to each other. We have a really good relationship. Um, but to fuck with him one day, I was just like, I left a voice message for him, and I just did the whole like, hey, ara, ara, and I did that to him.
I was dead ass just gonna ask you if you'd ever done like the ada
Yes, I have. I was just like, I'm so sorry, dude. That was cringe. And he's just like, that wasn't cringe. He's like,
It was something.
can I can I pay you to do more? And I'm like, no.
Pump the brakes.
It's like, no, maybe, but no. Um,
Wow.
it was hilarious. So I love abusing it. It's great. It makes my
Dude,
friends really nervous, which is awesome.
are you into like tabletop? I mean, obviously you're into tabletop. Like, do you play as well?
Oh, absolutely. Oh,
Sure.
I run games. I'm a forever
Okay.
GM.
I had a feeling that maybe you were a GM.
Yeah, I have the forever GM vibe. I get that.
Yeah.
It's fine. I get to play all the characters I would play as NPCs instead.
There you go.
It's like,
It's perfect.
yeah, like that meme from like Fairly Odd Parents where the dad's just like, this is where I would put my player character if I had one.
If I had one.
Like if any of you nerds would actually run a game, but no, it's
For
fine.
once.
I guess I'll do it. It's fine. Whatever.
Yeah. When did you start running games?
Ooh, this is a this is an arduous tale indeed. So it all started with Pathfinder.
Okay.
So I got into it with Pathfinder first edition or the first edition of Pathfinder. Um I want to say that was around 2012, 2013, somewhere around there. Played two games and I was just like, you know what? This tabletop thing sucks. I don't like this.
Famous
Oh,
last words.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And then because at the time they were doing the playtesting for D&D Next and I was listening to the Acquisitions Incorporated like playthroughs of it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, these guys are having fun. Why was the game I playing not fun? And so I was just like, you know what? Screw that GM. I'm just making fun. So when fifth edition came out, I waited to play again until fifth edition came out.
Sure.
I picked it up, I started running it, and very immediately became the forever GM.
Yeah.
Immediately became the forever GM. Uh, and it's not for lack of being able to find people to run a game. It's more so there's some personalities that I don't want as my GM,
I've
and
been there.
mhm. So I'm just like, there's a certain personality type, a certain GM type who can run a game and I will enjoy it. And they have been very few and far between. There are
Sure.
two of them that I could name. I could name drop those guys. Um, I did a podcast with one of them actually for like a long play.
That's rad.
Oh, that was for Savage Worlds. Fun aside, I actually I met Cheyenne Wright, the artist, one of the artists for Savage Worlds, when I was doing that podcast with those guys. And Homeboy was lovely. I love that man. He was really amazing with like tips and stuff for my artwork.
Yeah. That makes
So,
me so happy when you meet someone that you look up to and they're cool
oh yeah,
and not shitty.
he's a goofball just like Peter.
So what I'm hearing is puns.
Those two are like two peas in a pod.
That's funny.
But yeah, I love that dude though. He's awesome, and I should check in on him in a little while and just be like, hey, dude, hope everything's going well. What you up to?
Yeah.
So catch up with him. I know he and his wife had a lot of like cool stuff that they were doing the last time I spoke with them. But anyway, meandering, coming back to did fifth edition for a long while, and then eventually I became very disenfranchised with it. You know,
Mm.
I have issues with the challenge rating, the way that works in fifth edition.
Yeah.
And no, this isn't right. I followed the math, I followed the rules, and players aren't being challenged. It's like the thing that always comes up is like I always hear the like, oh, you're a bad GM, or like, you just don't understand the system. It's like, no, 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 I understand the system very well. I've set up some pretty cheeky scenarios to put my players through just to try and test the limits of this system. They were my guinea pigs and they would understand. They'll be fine.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so just like I'm testing the limits of the system. What can I get away with? What is too much?
Yeah.
Turns out there's not a lot that's too much outside of like doing the like, here's a legendary dragon, you're a bunch of level like eights. This
Yeah.
is something that will challenge you.
There you
It's
go.
over exaggeration, but I think my point gets across.
Oh yeah.
I got sick of it, and then turns out by me getting sick of it, I found this little thing called the old school revival or the old school renaissance. And I'm like, oh, what is this beautiful magical land of older editions of games? What is
Sounds like
this?
some sort of OSR thingy.
It does.
Interesting.
I found out about old school D&D, and I'm like, oh, the second edition sounds really cool. And so I collect second edition books just like as a side hobby.
That's
And
cool.
I love them. My one of my most treasured artifacts is a table played player's handbook from second edition, and it's got notes from the player in there. And they had some thoughts about the damage tables on some of like the items,
Yeah.
and like about how much money wizards got to start with. It was like a D4, and they scratched it out and wrote something different. And I'm like, you had thoughts about this, but
Word.
it's cool because it was pre-owned, and like I got somebody played this and they had fun with it. So I was like, oh, there's
Oh
history,
yeah. Those are the best kinds of books.
right? I love that.
Yeah.
So I collected the second edition books. I've always wanted to play a second edition game, but never really found anybody that would be willing to play it because I prefer playing in person if I can get away with it.
Yeah.
A lot of the local stuff is just fifth edition D&D, and I'm like, but guys, there's this other place that is making delicious chocolate desserts. It's a slightly different recipe. Would you not like to try? And they're just like, no. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll just be over here
Sick.
myself. So that wound into a long running rabbit hole of getting in on a live streamed game that I would play in and run, getting on that podcast, playing a live play game of that, or not a live play, recorded play. That's where I got introduced to like Savage Worlds. I got introduced to Zweihander, a bunch of different game systems, and
Mhm.
it sort of spiraled out from there. And then I hit this point where was starting to fall out of love with the hobby.
Sure.
Um, then Pathfinder put out second edition Pathfinder, and I'm like, oh, they fixed all the things I hated about first edition Pathfinder. It's great. I picked it up, and I was like, this is a beautiful game. It's perfect in every way. It's like it satisfies me in the way that it's just hard rules for everything,
Yeah.
but the action economy is actually good. So it's
Sure.
like you guys made it good. Thank you. So it's hard rules. Like the math just works. When I make a difficult encounter, it's actually difficult. When it's easy, it's actually easy.
Right.
It's perfect. The only problem is that it's crunchy, very crunchy. And
Yeah.
look, like I'm 32. I'm getting along in my years, and my memory ain't what it used to be. So, like, the more as time goes on, the less I'm like, maybe crunch is not so great at the table. Like I spend a lot of time because I'm still running a Pathfinder campaign right now at my current table, but they want to switch over to Castles and Crusades afterwards. So this already a big win. This already,
Hey. Yeah.
uh, but like even like during that, they'll be like, "Wait, can I do this thing?" And I'm like, "Well, open up the page on page number, whatever it says."
Yeah.
Or they'll say, "Can I do this thing with this spell?" And I'll be like, "What does the spell say?" And they'll read it off verbatim, and I'm like, "Oh, I understand. I can read legalese, so I can read through a rule book like a legal document and just be like, understood, great,
There
got
you
it."
go. Yeah.
I recognize that's not, a thing that most players are used to or want to do.
Right.
Uh,
Crunch is intimidating for sure.
so I'm just like, you know what? The things that these guys want to do at my table, they would feel better in a rules light system like CNC.
Hmm.
Um, but they don't want to switch over and lose anything they currently have because they have a lot of cool moves and stuff that they can do. So I'm like, okay, well, it'll
Yeah.
just be a shorter campaign. We'll end it a little sooner than I normally would. We'll just get to big plot points sooner, kind of like how the Airbender adaptation went. It'll be like a short season instead of a long season. It's fine. And
Yeah.
then I could be like, oh guys, oh no, the game's over. Well, I do have these wonderful CNC books that you guys can pick up. It's a rules light system. You can do anything you want.
Hint, hint.
Right. So the switch will be happening, but
Sure. And you said
My
they're currently playing Pathfinder 2e.
Yes,
Cool,
currently.
cool.
Um, and I do love the system. Like I'm not going to begrudge it or talk nasty about it. I love it. I genuinely do.
Yeah.
Uh, but I will say, at my age now, as old and withered as I am, I love CNC more.
Life's
And
too short.
I know. Oh,
That's all
and
we
I'm
can say.
not just saying that because Steve gives me beer money. I'm just like I genuinely do love the system a lot. It's lovely
Yeah,
to have a rules light system that just works really well. Siege engine is lovely. It's
yeah,
beautiful. I love it. The biggest incentive, not only the biggest incentive is that my artwork's in it. So I can be like, oh look at this thing that I drew. This is what you're fighting now.
enjoy.
Enjoy this horror I have unleashed upon you.
I'm
So
directly responsible for this, just so you know.
I love that idea. And Peter
Yeah,
always like was like theory crafted like build or not builds. He doesn't like builds. Theory crafted ideas of how to like run the game in different ways. He always
sure.
throws it away. I'm just like this encyclopedic knowledge is beautiful. I love this. So yeah, so long meandering track to get to that. That's where I started, and this is where I am.
Sure.
I started with new, fell in love with old, went back to new, and I'm just like, you know what, old is where it's at.
Sure. I think that's like the best kind of perspective to have, if there's like a best perspective, such a thing. Like try a little bit of everything or a lot of everything, and then you can kind of pick out what you want.
Yep. And I very much do know what I love running at a table from all the systems that I own and I have read through and played. I have a massive collection of like RPG books. There's
Yeah.
all sorts of systems in there. And then I have like a PDF emporium of just like more. And I'm like, I've looked through a lot of stuff and I've learned a lot of stuff, but it's like simple is for me, simple is better. So it's like
Yeah.
all right, CNC is my home. Like both my home for my art, but also for my heart.
Art and heart. That's awesome. Like, did Castles and Crusades or Troll Lord Games come first for you?
Castles and Crusades came first, but barely, barely.
Yeah?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I heard about them on Twitter. I can't remember what it was at this point. Like one of the tweets blew up, and it came across my feed, and I'm like, "Ooh,
One of
what's this?"
Davis's, I bet.
Yeah, probably one of Davis's. I'm like, "What's this? What's this Castles and Crusades thing?" And I'm like, "Ooh, this looks really cool.
Yeah.
Like, I like the cover art on this. This looks kind of dope. I like this. I dig this." And so I picked up one of the books. I picked up the PDF, the free PDF, and I'm like, "Ooh, I like this." I'm reading through it. I'm like, "This is really cool. I like this.
Sure.
This is lovely. I like this." So then I started doodling like my own like character sheet just because I was like, I just want to do something silly for me as I do a solo playthrough because none of my local friends at the time wanted to play it, so I just have to play all alone. Uh, so make my own character sheet, and I threw that sketch up on Twitter,
Yeah.
and then that's how I got pulled into the fold because Davis saw that, and then next thing I know, he's DMing me just like, "So do you want to make a character sheet for us?" And I'm like, "Excuse?"
Hello, yes.
Like, yes, but also hi.
They really do get right down to business.
They really do. It was so funny too because like we Davis and I had several meetings going back and forth right before like the OGL stuff sort of reshuffled the schedule.
Mm.
We'd gone back and forth doing sketches and like figuring out the layout, and then next thing I know, like and I joked about it on like the last like team stream I was on, but it really was kind of like it where Steve just like a final boss shows up out of nowhere. He's like, "You do art, don't you?" Like, "Yeah, great." Puts down like a box of like orders on the list. He's like, "Get to work," and I'm like, "Okay."
Okay, sick.
But it's been fantastic. So I love it. I love every minute of it.
Do you have like a favorite thing that you've done for TLG? Or like an art piece or the character sheets or like anything?
Oh God, honestly, it was the first big one that I got to do for TLG, which was the Burbalang.
And that's in Monsters and Treasures?
will be monsters. It will be in Monsters and Treasure. Yeah, that was the first one that I did, and it is one of my favorite pieces I've ever done.
Dude, I'm gonna immediately go look for it after this.
Yeah, absolutely. Go look for it. I'm so proud of that piece. Like I love all the work I've gotten to do for TLG, but the Burbalang is my favorite. And it might be because it was the first. You always remember your first, but
Yeah. Oh, you
I,
do though.
there's something magical about getting to draw that horrific creature. I'm like, ugh, got to pour my heart and soul into making this creepy thing look super creepy.
Like, what is it?
Oh, the Burbalang.
Yeah.
Um, think of like a really fucked up living gargoyle, more or less.
Incredible.
Yeah, like it's the way it was like described from what I can recall. It's like a creature that can zip in and out of the like physical plane,
Mm.
and then it, like ambushes people just popping out of the like out of that ethereal plane. I think this is just
God.
what this is what I recall, and it might be a false memory, I don't know, but I know that it had like bluish skin. I gave it semi translucent wings, just
That's
like
so cool.
to like touch on that like translucent sort of stuff that it does.
Yeah.
And there's drool coming off of its teeth out of its like open mouth as it's crawling down a wall. Like the artwork has
God.
a dungeon wall, and I'm like, oh, this is so cool and creepy.
That sounds awesome.
Fun. Like I treasure that. I treasure that so much.
Well, this is actually perfect because we're just about out of time. I'm gonna
Yes.
go look that up and just ogle it because that sounds amazing.
Yes.
But thank you so much. This was so much fun.
Absolutely. It was tons of fun.
Yeah,
You know,
I love this.